Hey, Startup Nation. Imagine a job where you can work wherever you want, on whatever you want, from wherever you want. Hello to white sand beaches of Thailand or the comfort of your own couch. Oh, and most importantly, you're your own boss. Now, what if I told you that the dream job could become your reality? This is the life of a freelancer, and with some hard work and with the help of Hectic, it can be your life too. Hectic is an all-in-one business management software built specifically for freelancers who are just getting started or looking to take their freelance business to the next level. Hectic is everything a freelancer needs to get started, from an easy-to-use contracts and proposals builder to client management and project tracking to expenses and invoicing that features click-to-play technology that makes it quick and easy for freelancers to get paid. And we all want to get paid, Startup Nation. Built specifically for freelancers, Hectic is everything you need to get started. Visit gethecticapp.com/the startup life now to learn more and start for free. Yep. Adding your first client on the platform will always be free. And if you sign up through gethecticapp.com/the startup life, you'll be supporting me and this podcast, because who couldn't use a little support these days, Startup Nation? Visit gethecticapp.com/the startup life to find everything you need to start or grow your freelancing business today, and put those in-demand skills to good use in the way you've always dreamed of. The link is there in the show notes.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation, so I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is The Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, as we're progressing towards our goals, whether it be starting a business, climbing the corporate ladder, or whatever the case may be, you know, you're always looking for ways to do that, ways to unlock hidden potential and stuff like that, which is why we have a fantastic guest here for you today. He is the CEO of Igniting Souls, a global company transforming lives and businesses. He's also the author of Unhackable: Close the Gap Between Dreaming and Doing. He is Kary Oberbrunner. KO, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's great to be here, Dominic.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it. Before we kind of get started, you know, as of this recording, man, I think like 75% of the country is like under snow and ice, man. How's it there in Ohio there for you, man? You keeping warm?
I am keeping warm, and you nailed it, man. The weather has hacked many people, so
Absolutely.
It's totally relevant.
Absolutely. Yeah. Here in the South, we're here in Tennessee, so we don't really get this much snow like that. Wow. But fortunately for me and my wife, we used to live in Colorado, so we're not kind of rookies to this type of living. So
totally.
But that's neither here nor there, man. But once again, like I said, thank you so much for coming on the show. And, you know, before we kind of dive into what you do in your book, your amazing book, Unhackable, Startup Nation. That book is available today. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast to purchase. Man, I want to ask you this, because one of the things you talk about a lot is the attention economy, man. Break that down for us, man. What's that all about?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, before you and I were even born, there were 3 channels.
Right.
And I mean, they were competing with very little competition. I mean, it was basically like whatever, ABC, NBC, CBS. And
right.
we had a world that did not have that many stimuli. Today, though, human knowledge is doubling, not every 1,000 years, but every 12 hours. And we live in a world right now where, think about it, we even use the word pay attention. Interesting.
Right.
Pay attention.
Interesting.
So we live in an economy where basically before people spend cash, they try to get your attention. You know, back in the day, they got your cash because there was nothing to watch on TV. There was nothing to watch in the public square. But today, everyone's so distracted. We touch, swipe, click, tap our smartphones 2,600 times a day. We have 35,000 decisions that we have to make. Cornell University did a study and said that just food decisions are 226 a day.
Right.
So like you're standing in front of McDonald's and you see the sign And all of a sudden you might not process 50 decisions, but your subconscious is constantly grinding.
Right.
And as a result, this is why at the end of the day, we say, I'm burned out, I'm running on fumes, I'm going on empty. We are totally getting hacked.
Right. Right. No, I definitely understand that. And it reminds me of, the old story about, Steve Jobs. One of the reasons he wore like the black turtleneck and the jeans. And
Yes.
so he will have to that's one decision he doesn't have to make because it's already
Yes.
decided. So I definitely understand that. And that kind of leads us to your book, man. And Startup Nation, once again, that book is Unhackable, Close the Gap Between Dreaming and Doing. And in Startup Nation, it's a 30-day elixir for creating flawless ideas, leveraging superhuman focus, and achieving optimal performance through flow. Now, when you purchase the book, Startup Nation, I love the way it's broken down because it's kind of broken down by like, day 1, day 2, day 3, all the way up to day 30. So before we kind of dive into the book even more, man, just kind of talk about what made you want to write this book and why you broke it down into the days like that.
Yeah, I think that when we have a concept many times, I mean, this is my 8th book, and I get it. I've been around the block a while. I'm bald, the whole thing. So I feel that a lot of times the book is not digestible. So I didn't want the book to hack people. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh my gosh, it's a 250-page book, and how can I ever break that down? So instead I said, I want to make it be that you can do this book in a month, and it's fun, and there's exercises each day, little action plans. So the book itself is try to make you be unhackable, and therefore I had to write it in a medium that would be bite-sized.
For sure. And let's kind of dive into some of those days here. I'm looking at all of them. There's so many to choose from, and I don't mean like in an overwhelming sense, but I mean in the sense of like you can tell like how each day builds upon the next, which I think is super important, but let's talk about like day 7. I think is interesting. Inventory your promotion. Kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So many times people forget all that they've accomplished. In fact, one of my coaches, Dan Sullivan, he says that you're either focused on the gap or the gain. In other words, as entrepreneurs, your podcast listeners, super successful people, they can constantly be staring off in the horizon of like, well, one day when I achieve this much money or this much success. And what it happens is you never take an inventory of your promotion. When you look at how far you've come, all of a sudden your confidence gets unhackable. Because you're like, yeah, I did come from nothing. Or, you know what, I did make a ton of mistakes, but look how far I've come. So rather than getting hacked on what you don't have, day 7, you actually take a detailed analysis of all the promotion that you've achieved. And I actually use a biblical story in that chapter where the whole book's full of science, biology, athletics, military. But in this chapter, it's with David when he's about to face Goliath.
Right.
And rather than him saying, crud, I've never fought a giant before, which was true, he says to the king, hey man, I can take the giant. And the king says, why? He says, because I took out a lion and I took out a bear. Now I can take out Goliath. So even David, facing his current trial, said, you know what, I'm going to take an inventory of my promotion. And it gave him the confidence to go for the future.
Right. It's interesting you say that. I was actually, on a panel. Are you familiar with the app Clubhouse? A lot of people are on Clubhouse these days, right? Yeah. So I was on a panel discussion for Clubhouse, and we were talking about the imposter syndrome, right? And that idea of kind of forgetting that inventory, was like, came up quite a bit. So it's just very, not only interesting, but timely to talk about that. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying it's relevant because, imposter, I'll tell you what, this is a great topic.
Sure.
People say, fake it till you make it. Okay.
Right.
Now, here's what I say. Be the part before you get the part.
I hear that.
Okay, so big difference. Fake it till you make it says, I'm going to be somebody that I'm not.
Right.
But when you say be the part before you get the part, it says, you know what? Who cares that the world hasn't caught up yet? They'll figure it out. They'll figure out how awesome you are. But before they do, just be the part.
Right. Right.
Very different.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm reminded. I've had multiple mentors back when I was in my banking days, where they say, dress for your next promotion, right? So, and
that's good,
right? And it really speaks to less the fake it till you make it, but more to be the part before you get the part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
love it.
For sure. I want to ask you about day 11, because I think a lot of people in Startup Nation are going to definitely like that one. Time, write your check. Anytime you hear check, man, it's always something that perks your ears up. But kind of talk about that day a little bit. Day 11.
Oh, that's good. Well, I'll tell you what, I borrow a story from true story from Jim Kary. Okay. Jim Kary, if people don't know this story, he was broke, man. He came from a home that didn't have any money. In fact, he tells the story about having to live in a van on his relative's property, like his whole family when they were young. So he did not come from wealth. But what he did is, when he lived in California, he overlooked the valley. And he said, you know what? Someday I'm going to be an actor. And rather than keep saying someday, he said, I'm actually going to write the check. And so the story is, he tells it on Oprah back in the 90s, but he actually wrote a story for $10 million, put it in his wallet, and put for the future acting services rendered.
Right.
Okay. So he basically said, by Thanksgiving, 3 years, I'm going to have $10 million.
Right.
Now, law of attraction doesn't work. Law of attraction says, I'm just going to visualize things and it's just all going to happen. Jim Kary will tell you that he took massive action then. So it's identifying your future, but then in the present moment, taking massive action. So he did. That's exactly what he did. And sure enough, that's when Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber and all the videos came out, and he achieved it. So in the day 11, I actually have you write a date, a deadline, and a description. You need all three.
Right.
You can't just write a check. You got to put the date, because all of a sudden now that's actually one of the other days, which is called the focus filter, and that's urgency. Once you create a deadline, man, you burn a hole through your obstacle. It's like when the professor assigned a assignment and said it's due at the end of the semester. When do people do it?
Right.
They do it at the end of the semester.
Right.
Why? Because there's a cost. So you put the date, you put the description, and away you go. And the dollar amount.
Right. Right. No, I very familiar with that story, and definitely love that story. And I appreciate you sharing that. It's just about being intentional. You know what I mean? And that's what I really love. And one of the things that story points out, just like with your book, Unhackable here, it really doesn't matter if, like I said earlier, if you're pursuing an acting career, if you're starting a business, pursuing a dream, trying to climb up the corporate ladder, like these things, these days of activities and concepts and anecdotes, they work in everyday life. If you're a person who's about growing and learning and trying to build upon yourself, when you say that, Kary?
Absolutely. And, if people just, they're like, what is this dude even talking about being hacked?
Right.
We think about hacks like bank account. Your bank account gets hacked, or your computer or your phone. But when you really understand the definition for hacked, it means when someone or something gains unauthorized access to a system or a computer. So back in the day, 2016, I woke up with this dream about a future society with people's brains getting hacked. And it was a crazy dream. and I kind of forgot it when I woke up in the morning. But I said, you know what? I'm going to write a fiction book about this. So I wrote a fiction book. Actually, yeah. The dream happened in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Then I published the book in 2016. And when people read it, they're like, this isn't fiction. This is really going to happen.
Right.
So they said, you got to turn this into a nonfiction book. And so that's what I did, Dominic. I turned it into a nonfiction book, and it's based on facts. Like, your brain is a supercomputer and your body is made up of systems: circulatory, respiratory, pulmonary. So in a real way, people can get hacked, not just computers.
For sure. Absolutely. And to be honest with you, we always talk about, a lot of times around here on the Startup Life, like the brain is the best computer that, man will ever know.
I like that.
You know what I mean? So I
Yes.
definitely feel you, on that one for sure.
Wow.
For sure. Once again, Startup Nation, we're talking to Kary Oberbrunner, CEO of Igniting Souls and author of Unhackable: Close the Gap Between Dreaming and Doing It. And once again, Startup Nation, we have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast to purchase that book. But if you're listening on radio, you can go to unhackablebook.com, unhackablebook.com. We have that link there in the show notes if you listen to the replay on the podcast. I want to go through just two more days here, and then before we kind of transition here, just a little bit, I'm interested in where is it? I lost my spot. I do apologize.
Oh, it's all good.
Day 19, activate your diet. Kind of talk about that day a little bit.
Oh man, that's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
See, so that chapter is all about how most of us, at least I do, sometimes I'm not even hungry,
mm-hmm.
and I go to the refrigerator,
yeah.
or I go to the cupboard, and here's what happens: we usually consume when we're stressed or bored,
right? And
you think about life today. There's a lot of people who are stressed, or a lot of people who are bored.
Man,
well, guess what?
Who you telling?
Guess what? We now go to the internet refrigerator. In other words, we're all consuming information.
Right.
And when do we consume information? When we're stressed or when we're bored. That's when we scroll and we try to disassociate. Disassociate is a counseling term. It basically means that you leave your brain, your body. You distract yourself. You daydream. Why? Because it's too painful to be in the present.
Right.
It's a coping mechanism. So what I say in chapter 19, day 19, is both of us, we got to take an information diet. We were not meant to be consumers. We were meant to be creators.
Absolutely.
And I know, your listeners, man, they're awesome at that. So you don't want critics. You don't want consumers. You want creators. Critics simply reject everything. Consumers eat everything. But creators, they're selective. So diet, D-I-E-T, it stands for a filter to know what information you should consume. D stands for determine your destination. Where do you want to actually end up? I is identify who's getting the results. E is eliminate all the empty calories. Unsubscribe from all the other emails. Shut down the notifications on your phone. And then T stands for turn your focus only after you've squeezed out every last drop. So that's a great diet plan for information.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. And the last one, and I know Startup Nation is definitely familiar with this one right here. Day 21, silence your critics. Look, man, when you're doing something that 99% of the other people are not willing to do, not willing to try to even attempt, man, you're going to have those, we just like to call them naysayers around here in Startup Nation, man. But kind of talk about that one a little bit, man.
Yes. So many of us, we get hacked by haters, by critics, by cynics, by even close people,
right?
Like maybe even family members who say, "Oh man, I don't want to see you get hurt."
Right.
So then they shoot us down. And the other thing is too, you choosing to say yes to your dreams forces them to look in the mirror and say, "What am I doing with my dreams?" So a lot of times they're not even angry at you. They're angry at the mirror that you're holding up to them because you're so on fire. You're a soul on fire. So silence your critics. Basically, that day gives you just some practical steps on how to disconnect
Right.
from the negative sources in your life. This book is, people are going to read it and they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, but they're going to say, I forgot about all this.
Right.
I need to be reminded of this. So you string the 30 days together and all of a sudden you live this unhackable life. It's very cool.
For sure. And Startup Nation, one of the other reasons I like this book, because, it's filled with anecdotes. It's filled with the graphics and it reinforces, each of the days, with stories, because we all know, and I appreciate you putting that in the book, Kary, as the author, because, a lot of people resonate, you can put, doctrines in there and stuff like that, but really people really do resonate with stories that really have that sticking point. You know what I mean? So I definitely appreciate that. And I know when Startup Nation purchases this book, they'll appreciate that as well. Once again, Startup Nation, that book is Unhackable: Close the Gap Between Dreaming and Doing. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access. If you listen to radio, it's unhackablebook.com. Once again, that link is there in the show notes for easy access. If you listen to replay on the podcast, man, I want to change gears here a little bit, man. Just kind of talk about your company, Igniting Souls, a little bit, man. Talk about the work you do and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So the most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire. And that's a quote from a guy named Ferdinand Foch, who is a general in the French army. But here's the thing. A few years ago, my friend said to me, Kary, what's the most damaging thing in the life of a child? I was like, I have no clue. I thought about it for a while. I said, is it alcoholism, abuse, abandonment? He said, no. According to Carl Jung, it's the unlived life of the parent. The unlived life of the parent. And I thought, oh my gosh, I got 3 kids. That is so true. So in other words, what he's basically saying is that for a kid to see a parent or guardian for 18 years of their life come home, kick the proverbial dog, say, don't bother me, give me the remote, give me a 6-pack, let me veg out. Veg is short for vegetable. Brain waves are dead.
Right.
Let me just be brain dead so I can go back at it on Monday. I'll tell you what, that kid is uninspired. So I said, well, nobody wakes up and says, I want to live the unlived life.
Right.
It just happens. So how does it happen? And here's what I determined. The soul on fire is someone who knows the answer to 3 questions. Who am I? Identity. Why am I here? Purpose. And where am I going? Direction. And when you understand your identity, your purpose, your direction, you're a soul on fire. And so what we do is we help, we call them ACEs. Authors, coaches, entrepreneurs, and speakers.
I hear that.
So that's our exact audience, ACEs, authors, coaches, entrepreneurs, and speakers. And we help them literally not only personally grow in those 3 areas, identity, purpose, and direction, but once they become a soul on fire, oh my gosh, most of them want to write a book. And so we are a publishing company, but we also are branding. I mean, we basically say, look, you got a message to share. Let's get you in front of the world. And so we help ACEs market their stories.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. And I want to ask a quick follow up to that because, look, man, we were just talking about earlier about we got this whole, I guess people are calling it a snowmageddon situation around here and stuff like that. But you got that, you got a pandemic, you got social unrest. So when you're talking to your ACEs, right, your authors, coaches, entrepreneurs, and speakers, man, clearly, what you do works and it works really well. Have you had to critique that a little bit, or is it one of those things where it's like, it ain't broke, don't fix it? Given the times, that is.
Man, I'll tell you what. I was going to publish this book anyway, and then the pandemic hit, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now it's even more relevant.
Right.
And the craziest thing, I don't know if you saw The Social Dilemma on Netflix.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, that came out the same month. So I feel like, not to be woo woo, but I feel like in the global consciousness, this was the right message. Like,
Right.
2020 was hacked. I mean, everybody's 2020 got hacked. Nobody woke up on January 1st and said, we're going to have this crazy election. We're going to have pandemic.
Right.
We're going to have racial, unrest.
Mm-hmm.
No, but you know what? I'll tell you this. There's going to be another hack coming. Like, if we live in the world, it's going to keep hacking us. So
Right.
you have to master this topic, because there's going to be more distractions, more decisions, and we're going to get sidelined and sabotaged. But the super achievers are the ones who know the tools to be unhackable.
Right. Right. No, I definitely understand that. And Startup Nation, I don't know if you catching. I hope you're catching this, because I think today's lesson is don't get hacked, and you can do that with the book Unhackable. Once again, close the gap between dreaming and doing. And I imagine if you're thinking about wanting to be one of those aces, authors, coaches, entrepreneurs, and speakers, make sure you check out KaryOberbrunner.com. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to replay on the podcast, so you can check out the knowings and doings of what he's doing. And if you want to be part of that community, make sure you check out KaryOberbrunner.com, man. Just want to transition here and start trying to wrap up here with you a little bit, man. So, you talked about your 3 kids, man, kind of talk about how, as a parent, right? I have 3 kids as well,
Nice.
because look, they go through stuff. I mean, we go through stuff as adults. They go through stuff as kids, whether it be, bullying at school, if schools are open or whatever the case may be normally. But, go through stuff at school, being middle school, stuff like that. How can parents kind of, train their kids a little bit to kind of live that unhackable life, to not get hacked so often? Because I mean, we're going to get hacked, it just happens. That's life. It is what it is. Right. But as parents, kind of coaching up kids that, who are be the next leaders of this this crazy world we live in, how do you kind of pass those lessons down to your kids, man? What does that look like?
Well, I know every parent has different standards. Some parents certainly say you're not going to have a lot of screen time or this type of thing. But what we do is we basically say, my wife and I, our kids are not on social media.
Gotcha.
And I'll tell you what, my wife's a counselor, and again, I'm not judging anybody, but she has to counsel a lot of kids who, I mean, think about it. We used to compare ourselves like, oh, the neighbor's got green grass.
Yes.
Well, today you got every neighbor in the planet.
Right.
On the social media. So now all of a sudden, instant access. You used to be bullied at school. Well, now you can be bullied at home through your social media.
Right.
So I recommend this app. It's called Castido. I have no affiliate or anything like that.
Okay.
But it starts with a Q. So it's Castido. And it basically allows you to just have control of your kids' phones. And you can set times. You can say, hey, you can have X amount of time, or you have to be off by this time. And you can block certain websites. It's just a very easy to use filter that allows you to essentially be involved in your kids' life. And that's one thing. The other thing I would say is create activities where you bond with them. My wife reads with the kids. She's been doing that since a young age. They're even teenagers now. They still like that time, and it becomes much more than reading. It becomes, hey, let's share about my day and my struggles. So keep the relationship up with the kids.
I hear that. Awesome stuff. I appreciate that. And before I ask the last question, Kary, I just want to say once again, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your insight and your wisdom, and also your book, once again, Startup Nation, Unhackable, Close the Gap Between Dreaming and Doing. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen on the replay on the podcast, and if you listen on radio, it's unhackablebook.com. And also make sure you check out KaryOberbrunner.com. That link is there in the show notes for easy access as well, man. So before I let you go, man, if you would, I'm just going to pass the microphone over to you, man, because look, there's a lot of stuff going on, crazy times, crazy weather, crazy world, right? If you would, please, good sir, just leave us with some words of encouragement to take us out for today.
I'll tell you what, I'm I'm a person of faith. I don't push it on anybody,
I
but
hear that.
I would just tell people, I do 3 C's. Okay. I connect with my creator, my core, and my community. And that keeps me in alignment. My creator, my core, my community. And listen, you need to celebrate good sources of content. So I would tell everybody, I'm just going to say, rate and review this podcast. Our brother's been working hard. He's been putting himself out there to give us amazing content, and show some love to the community. Rate it, review it, subscribe on iTunes, and then spread the word. And I love it, man. Thanks for having me here today.
No worries. I appreciate all those kind words as well. And that's going to wrap up this session of the Startup Life, Startup Nation, once again with CEO of Igniting Souls and author of Unhackable, Kary Oberbrunner. Thank you so much, KO.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No worries. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life. If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life.